Namashreshtam manumapi sachiputram atra swarupam rupam tasya grajam uruparim maturim gostavatim radhakundam girivaram maho radhika madhavasam prapto yasya pratita kripaya shri gurum tam natosmi. Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. So we're continuing to read from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 25, entitled The Residents of Varanasi Become Vaishnavas. Now, we're currently reading a few verses which are expressions of one of Prakashananda Saraswati's chief disciples. Prakashananda and is the chief of the spiritual community, I should say the Mayavad spiritual community, which is the predominant spiritual community of Varanasi, and he has just been converted by the association of Mahaprabhu. It's fine. Thanks, Jai Gurudev. By the association, influence of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he has taken to bhakti, and one of his chief disciples is expressing his newfound realizations on bhakti. And yesterday we left off with some verses that touched on the Shad Darshan, or some of the systems of the Shad Darshan, which are the 6 traditional philosophical systems of India: Mimamsa, Yoga, Vedanta, Nyaya, and others. What is it? Shankhya, and then there's one other. And so now he says, verse 55. This is Prakashananda one of Prakashananda Saraswati's chief disciples. Paramakarana Ishwara Kehana Himani Svavamata Stape Paramatera Kandane. Of the philosophers mentioned, i.e. each philosophical system has their main proponent, a sage or a muni who was the founder or chief proponent of that system. So of these philosophers mentioned, none really cares for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes. They are always busy refuting philosophical theories of others and establishing their own. Tate chaya darshana haite tatvanahi jani mahajana ye kahe se satyamani. By studying the 6 philosophical theories, one cannot reach the absolute truth. It is therefore our duty to follow the path of the Mahajans, the authorities. Whatever they say should be accepted as the supreme truth. Tarko pratishta shrutayo vibina nasavrishi riyasya matam nabinam dharmasya tattvam nihitam guhayam mahajano yena gata sapanta. Dry arguments are inconclusive. A great personality whose opinion does not differ from others is not considered a great sage. Simply by studying the Vedas, which are variegated, one cannot come to the right path by which religious principles are understood. The solid truth of religious principles is hidden in the heart of an unadulterated, self-realized person. Consequently, as the Shastras confirm, one should accept whatever progressive path the Mahajans advocate. The purport says that this is a verse spoken by Yudhisthira Maharaj in the Mahabharata, Vanaparva. The essential message of the verse is that those persons who are self-realized, God-realized, they in themselves are more important than the Shastra. Not that the Shastra is necessarily at discord, not that there's a contradiction or disharmony between who are being referred to here as Mahajans, great people. But if there is, then it is the living Shastra. The Mahajan is known as a living Shastra because they have embodied the core tenets, the very principles on which the Shastra is based, have been incorporated into their life and applied, and thus they are living. And thus the way the Shastric principles are living in their life is appropriate to every given time, place, and circumstance. So it's a living, dynamic application of the Shastric principle, which is of course superior to that which is written down in the book. So the point being here that it is the great personalities who have understood and lived the ideals of the Shastra who are to be followed. And of course that is generally in alignment with the Shastra. But if there is need for modification to suit the modern context or a changing environment, then that is also acceptable. And we see such innovations in the lives of our recent acharyas, such as Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada, especially. And if one wants to stick, if one wants to give precedent to the Shastra, what is written down in the Shastra, over what is being practiced and introduced by the living Shastra, the person living those Shastric principles, then they will fall into a pit of dogma or into a trap of dogma and be unable to follow and appreciate the living, growing, evolving current of spiritual revelation. And this is what happened with Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Even some of his followers, some of his top followers, believe it or not, they could not appreciate his understanding, his living, dynamic presentation, conception. Like, hang on a minute, this doesn't concur with what was written back then a few hundred years ago. So in order to appreciate and benefit from the spiritual revelation, then one needs to follow the Mahajans. And of course, it is the caveat here is that you have to make sure they are a true Mahajan and not someone just pretending to be, or someone that fantasizes themselves as living in a fantasy, believing that they are a great person. And there are a few of those around today, if one cares to look. We do live in the age of hypocrisy. One of the chief tenets of Kali Yuga, one of the prime qualities is hypocrisy. Hypocrisy essentially means dishonesty. Two facets of the person are not in accord. They say one thing and they do another. This is dishonest. It's cheating. Many things flow from dishonesty. Cheating is one. So hypocrisy in the spiritual realm, in the spiritual domain, means cheating other people, pretending to be something someone is not, and misleading them. So, of course, it's a given here that when one is following others, then you have to make sure that those others are qualified, that they're true Mahajans, true great people.
Prabhu, to make sure that it's the true Mahajan, it's actually doesn't depend on our own reasoning. It's more based on faith, no? That
Well,
we have no control over which we have no control, isn't it, or what?
We have no control over faith.
The faith in that Mahajan, we don't decide it.
You decide who you want to put your faith in.
Isn't it Sukriti that brings this faith?
Well, how did you get your Sukriti? Ultimately, you're choosing how you want to live your life and where you want to put your faith. No one is putting a gun to your head and saying, you have to follow me. So faith is the placement of one's faith is a choice. You choose where to put your faith. That's the whole idea of...
Because of something pushing me from inside.
Sure, but everything is pushing you from inside. You are inside. Your consciousness is inside. Who do you think is? Where does the faith come from? From you. So you choose where to put it.
It was a blessing from the result of Sukriti, that I have no power over it.
It may be, but how do you get Sukriti?
It's past lives. I have no power over it now in this life.
Yes, you do, because this life is a product of previous lives. You think everything is happening by chance?
Okay, but
You do something, you get a result. If you do good things, you get what's called Sukriti. And even beyond Sukriti is what one gets from association with Vaishnavas, Sadhu Sangha. Now that is beyond Sukriti. But Sukriti kind of merges from good fortune into spiritual fortune. There's a continuum. But at no stage should you not be working according to your choice or your free will. It's not as if, some lightning bolt of fortune is coming out of the sky and striking you. Otherwise, why would we need to act at all? If we're just, at a higher level, one waits for divine fortune. We have the example of the Chataka bird, but that's very high. Before then, you choose to visit the temple. No one is forcing you. You choose to associate with devotees. No one's forcing you. All of these things are a product of free will.
But I'm not qualified to judge of the validity of the Mahajan, so that's what I'm saying. It's
So then,
faith.
so then, if you want to surrender, there should be an amount of judgment. You definitely did make a judgment, whether it happened in an automatic way, which you failed to recognize or didn't recognize so much. You definitely did make a judgment, even if that judgment was based on a feeling.
Okay, so it's
You cannot say you're just mindless and you're just not even thinking and you're moving like a robot through life. There's feelings and there's judgments constantly informing your choices. And they are choices. Choice means free will. So although you say you may feel that the process is outside of your control, everything comes as a result of actions performed in the past. So you may have set in force or set in motion forces that are now carrying you seemingly outside of your control. But that's the very nature of karma for both good and bad. You've performed activities, you've generated an energy of a particular nature, and now that energy has its effect on you. And you say, it's not my choice. Well, it is your choice. Initially, you are behind all of the circumstances that you find yourself in life. No one else is behind them, ultimately. Now, if you want to get into the topic of divine mercy, that happens at a later stage. But initially, all of the circumstances, the general understanding and the appropriate understanding is that all of the life circumstances we find ourselves in, for good or for bad, are a product of our own actions performed at a previous time. And to say otherwise is attributing one's life circumstances, attributing responsibility for those to someone else, which is taking the power out of our own hands. And of course, how does one change or improve their circumstances if it's not in one's control? But anyway, back to the point of how to judge who is an actual Mahajan. Generally speaking, Guru, Sadhu and Shastra should align. So there should be an accord with Guru, Sadhu, Shastra. So if you want to judge someone that you're prospectively thinking of surrendering to, then you should see that generally what they do is not out of alignment with Shastra or previous acharyas. And more specifically, if that person has received recognition and appointment from their own Gurudev, who has in turn received it from his Gurudev and in return from his, then you can be confident that this person possesses some qualification, is genuine, That is the parampara. That is the purpose of the parampara, to transmit spiritual substance from person to person in a chain. And the idea is that we connect. We take advantage of that. Connect to serve that. Link with that. So if someone is effectively channeling an effective link in the parampara, then you can be confident that connecting with them will produce results spiritually. Will be beneficial spiritually. And your point of having Sukriti, and that it is that Sukriti that's guiding you, is valid. But my point is that that Sukriti didn't come out of nowhere. It didn't come from a lottery.
Sure, but I'm saying in this present life, I didn't do anything to have this faith. To then refer to what you said now, shastras or whatever, is a reasoning that I can make in a second time. But first, in the first place, there is a faith that I have no control over it. I mean, that's how I feel it.
Okay.
How I've seen it in other people. I don't know.
Sure. Well, that's correct. And your point regarding that was?
That this faith, how do I choose, how do I judge that this is a valid Mahajan and I can put my faith in him? I actually can't judge that. It's a question of faith.
Initially, yeah. But then you have to apply some rational principle.
Sure.
So you can say if someone has a little bit of faith and they're guided according to their fortune and according to their nature to a certain person, then still they have a responsibility to apply some rational principles and some judgment. Sure. So at all stages along the process, you have the ability to make choices for good or for bad. It cannot be just a deferral to, I don't have any choice in the matter. It's my fate, it's my Sukriti, I'm going this way and that way. To a certain extent, that's true. But it cannot be used as an excuse to do any old thing. Still, there's always a responsibility to improve, to reference Shastra in order to judge who is appropriate to surrender to or not. In order to use one's intelligence. At no stage in the process, really, should one abandon one's intelligence. And just go, I'm just moving according to my feelings, my Sukriti. It's what?
It comes in a second time.
Well, second or first if it's cyclical. If your previous judgments created your Sukriti, and now your Sukriti is leading you to a particular place. What's second and what's first? But yeah, people are guided according to the conditions, the subjective conditions, i.e. Sukriti, that they've created for themselves in the past through various actions. Still, at all times, one has to question. There's different stages in the bhakti process. The first is known as Shravan Dasa. So Shravan means to hear. So first you need to hear. Now you may be attracted to a certain person because of the nature of your Sukriti or lack of Sukriti. You may be attracted to a genuine person or a charlatan, posing as a genuine person. But you're going to engage in some kind of Shravan, period of hearing. And that is a period of assessment as well. You're judging, you're making judgments, drawing conclusions. Shravandasa. And then after Shravandasa is Varan. Varandasa is a stage of acceptance. But you don't just accept. You can't just say, I'm just accepting everything. First you make a judgment. You can't abandon your rational mind. Your sense of discretion should never be jettisoned. So, Shravandasa, and then Varandasa is a stage of acceptance. You listen, you make a judgment, you have certain feelings about something as a result of exposure to it, about listening to it. Shravan, in this sense, also means seeing, it means experiencing, receiving, exposing yourself to something. And then Varandasa, after that, after the Shravan, you make a judgment. Based on that judgment, you choose Varandasa. Now Varandasa is a stage of acceptance. Varna means to accept. To accept something means that you've made a judgment that it's going to be good for you. I'm going to get involved in this. So at the stage of Shravandasa, your Sukriti may have brought you into contact with a certain quality or class of persons. Still, Shravandasa needs to be applied. You need to listen to what they're about and make a judgment based on that. And then you can surrender, Varandasa. And then after Varandasa comes sadhana, etc. You practice, you put into practice, you apply what you have surrendered to. And from there on, Varandasa, and then Prapandasa, and purification, and Apanadasa is a stage of perfection. But you can say, yes, it is a mix of stuff that we're being pushed by our previous impulses, but at the same time, those previous impulses were created by previous free will, choices of free will, which we still have today. So it's always going to be a mix of what you did in the past and the circumstances that created, both objective and subjective, and your choice now, how are you going to respond to that? But at no stage can your ability to make informed, intelligent decisions be sidelined. Text 58. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Vani Amritera Dara Tinhoye Kahaye Vastu Se Tatvasara. The words of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are a shower of nectar, whatever he concludes to the ultimate truth. To be the ultimate truth is indeed the summum bonum of all spiritual knowledge. E Sabha Britanta Shuni Maharashtriya Brahmana Prabhure Kahite Sukhe Karila Gamana. After hearing all these statements, the Maharashtrian Brahmin became very jubilantly went to inform Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Hena Kali Mahaprabhu Panchanare Snanakari Deketi Chaliyachena Bindu Madhava Hari. When the Maharashtrian Brahmin went to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Lord was going to the temple of Bindu Madhava after bathing in the waters of Panchanada. Pati se viprasabha britanta kahila shuni Mahaprabhu sukhe ishat hasila. While the Lord was on his way, the Maharashtrian Brahmin informed him about the incident that took place in the camp of Prakashananda Saraswati. Hearing this, Mahaprabhu smiled happily. Madhava Sundarya Deki Avista Haila Anganete Ashi Preme Nachite Lagila. Upon reaching the temple of Bindu Madhava, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, seeing the beauty of Lord Bindu Madhava, became overwhelmed in ecstatic love. He then began to dance in the courtyard of the temple. Shekara Paramananda Tapana Sanatana Charijana Milikare Nama Sankirtana. There were 4 people accompanying Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and these were Chandrasekhara, Paramananda Puri, Tapan Mishra, and Sanatan Goswami. They were all chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra in the following way. Hare Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha Gopala Govinda Ram Sri Madhusudan. They chanted Hare Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha Gopal Govinda Ram Sri Madhusudan. Chodiketi Laksha Loka Bale Hari Hari Utila Mangala Dvani Svarga Martya Bari. In all directions, hundreds and thousands of people began to chant Hari Hari. Thus there arose a tumultuous and auspicious sound filling the entire universe. Nikati Hari Dvani Shuni Prakashananda Deketi Kotuki Aila Lana Shishya. When Prakashananda Saraswati, who was staying nearby, heard this tumultuous chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, he and his disciples immediately came to see the Lord. Dekiya Prabhura Nritya Prema Dehera Madhuri Shishyagana Sange Se Bale Hari Hari. When Prakashananda Saraswati saw the Lord, he and his disciples also joined the chanting with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Prakashananda Saraswati was charmed by the Lord's dancing and ecstatic love, and by the transcendental beauty of his body. Kampasvarabanga sveda vaivarnya stamba ashru daraya bijiloka pulaka kadamba. Ecstatic spiritual transformations began to take place in the Lord's body. His body trembled and his voice faltered. He perspired, turned pale, and wept a constant flow of tears, which wet all the people standing there. The eruptions on the Lord's body appeared like kadamba flowers. Harsha dainya chapalyari sanchari vikara dekika shivasi lokera haila chamatkara. All the people were astonished to see the Lord's jubilation and humility, and to hear him talk in ecstasy. Indeed, all the residents of Kashi saw the bodily transformations and were astonished. Loka sangata deki prabhura bhaya yabe haila sanyasira gana deki nritya samvarila. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu regained his external consciousness, he saw that many Mayavadi sannyasis and other people were gathered there. He therefore suspended his dancing for the time being. Prakashanandera Prabhu Vandila Charana Prakashananda Ashitanra Darila Charana. After stopping the kirtan, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is a great example of humility, offered prayers under the feet of Prakashananda Saraswati. At this, Prakashananda Saraswati immediately came forward and clasped the Lord's lotus feet. Prabhu kahe tumi jagat guru pujyatama ami tomara nahai shishyara shishya sama. When Prakashananda caught hold of the Lord's lotus feet, the Lord said, "My dear sir, you are the spiritual master of the whole world, therefore you are most worshipable. As far as I am concerned, I am not even on the level of the disciple of your disciple." So remember that this pastime, this is a summary of this pastime. And Kaviraj Goswami has stated earlier in the chapter that he's given it a proper treatment in chapter 7 of Adi Lila, the first part of Chaitanya Charitamrita. So in between, what has been skipped over is the first meeting between Mahaprabhu and the Varanasi sannyasis, Mayavad sannyasis, at the house or at an event organized by the Maharashtrian Brahmin to bring them together. And then we have the famous pastime of Mahaprabhu pretty much converting them and saying, talking about, explaining the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, how his guru told him to chant the Hare Krishna mantra. Mahaprabhu expressing humility and saying, I'm just a fool. So my guru said, you cannot study Shastra, you can just chant. You just chant. But then going on to teach the Mayavadi sannyasis how the proper interpretation of the Veda, of the Vedanta Sutra, is a personal theistic interpretation rather than a Mayavad interpretation. That the Occam's razor interpretation is theistic, whereas Shankara, his conclusion, his impersonalistic conclusion, is an indirect interpretation. It's more complex, less straightforward, incorrect interpretation of Vedanta Sutra. And of course, a theme here is Mahaprabhu's personal beauty and his form and his expressions are also very attractive to people. They have a power all of their own. And this can be seen in great devotees. It's not necessarily just a function of logic and rationale. There is also an emotional element.
Here again, no?
Sorry?
Here again.
An emotional element, and ultimately the beauty of Krishna is attractive. Ultimately, beauty attracts everything. So although the rational mind plays a part, there is a beauty, and this is seen. Mahaprabhu is Krishna himself. So the beauty is also a powerful factor in causing spiritual change in those whom come in contact with Mahaprabhu. And Kaviraj Goswami never fails to mention this time and time again in Chaitanya Charitamrita, the beauty of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. After stopping the kirtan, and after that, so this incident at the temple of Bindu Madhava, where the Mayavadi sannyasis hear the kirtan, it's a tumultuous kirtan with many people, and they come and they pay their respects. Shreshtahana Kenekara Hinera Vandana Amara Sarvanasha Hayatumi Brahma Sama. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued, "You are a great spiritually advanced personality, and therefore you cannot worship a person like me. I am far inferior. If you do so, my spiritual power will be diminished, for you are as good as the impersonal Brahman. Yadyapi tomare saba Brahma samabase, loka shiksha lagi aiche karite na aishe." My dear sir, for you everyone is on the level of impersonal Brahman, but for the enlightenment of people in general, you should not behave in that way. Tenho kahe tomara purve ninda aparad ye karila, tomara charana sparshe sabakshaya gela. Prakashananda Saraswati replied, "Formerly I have committed many offences against you by blaspheming you, but now the effects of my offences are counteracted by touching your lotus feet. Jivan mukta api purna yanti samsaravasanam yad yachintya mahashakto bhagavatya paradinaha." If a person considered liberated in this life commits offences against the reservoir of inconceivable potencies, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he will again fall down and desire the material atmosphere for material enjoyment. Savai Bhagavata Srimat Parasparsha Hatha Shubha Beje Sarpa Vapur Hitva Rupam Vidyadara Chitam. Being touched by the lotus feet of Sri Krishna, that serpent was immediately freed from the reactions of his sinful life. Thus the serpent gave up his body and assumed the body of a beautiful Vidyadhara demigod. Prabhu kahe Vishnu Vishnu, Prabhu kahe Vishnu Vishnu, Ame Kshudra Jivahinam, Jive Vishnu Mani E Aparada Chinam. When Prakashananda Saraswati supported himself by quoting the verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu immediately protested by uttering the holy name of Vishnu. The Lord then presented himself as a most fallen living entity, and he said, if someone accepts a fallen conditioned soul as Vishnu, Bhagavan, or an incarnation, he commits a great offense. Jive Vishnu Buddhi Dure Ye Brahma Rudra Sama Narayane Mane Tare Pashandite Ganana. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued, to say nothing of ordinary living entities, even Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva cannot be considered on the level of Vishnu and Narayan. If one considers them as such, he is immediately considered an offender and atheist. Yastu Narayanam Devam Brahma Rudra Didaivatai Samatvenaiva Viksheta Napashandi Bhavedruvam. A person who considers demigods like Brahma and Shiva to be on the equal level with Narayan is to be considered a Pashandi. What's a Pashandi? An offender, yeah. We went over that a few months ago, didn't we?
Yeah.
Pashandi. A person who considers demigods like Brahma and Shiva equal is a Pashandi. Pashandi. Prakashananda kahe tumi shakshat bhagavan tabu yadi karatanra dasa abhiman. Prakashananda replied, you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna himself. Nonetheless, you are considering yourself his eternal servant. Tabu puja hai tumi bada amahaite, sarvanasha haya moda tomara nindate. My dear Lord, you are the Supreme Lord, and although you consider yourself the Lord's servant, you are nonetheless worshipable. You are much greater than I am. Therefore, all my spiritual achievements have been lost because I have blasphemed you. Muktanam apisiddhanam narayana parayana sudurlabha prasantatma kotishvapi mahamune. O great sage, out of many millions of materially liberated people who are free from ignorance, and out of many millions of siddhis who have nearly attained perfection, there is hardly one pure devotee of Narayan. Only such a devotee is actually completely satisfied and peaceful. Srimad Bhagavatam 6.14.5. So we can finish there. Any further comments? Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gauda Bhakta Vrinda. We read from Revealed Truth by Srila Bhaktisundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj. And in the Revealed Truth, Gurudev, Srila Govinda Maharaj is talking about the attitude and mood required for successful chanting. When I say successful chanting, that is offenseless chanting, free from offenses. Because the offense is the only thing, the name itself is perfect and pure. So there's no question of it not being successful in one's life. But the only thing is that there's blocks in the way. There's blocks, so it's not a deficiency in the name, but it's a block preventing the name from touching one's heart. And removing those blocks is what Gurudev is talking about in these chapters. Aparad. Aparad means an offense. So Nam Aparad means a block, an offense that prevents the holy name, Krishna Nam, from, they say, revealing himself, which means becoming real in one's life. And also, one of the blocks, there are 10 offenses to the holy name, known as the Dash Nam Aparad. 10 offenses to the holy name. Beginning with the first one as offenses against the devotee, so that's considered the most important. And so Gurudev is giving this specific attention. Offenses against the devotee. Because all the other offenses, there's offenses against devotees is known as Vaishnava Aparad, and it's in a distinct category because all of the other offenses can be rectified by simply continuing your sadhana process. So offenses against the holy name, for instance, can be rectified by continued chanting. Whereas Vaishnava Aparad cannot be rectified by such a process. To remediate Vaishnava Aparad requires a very specific activity, and that is to go to that Vaishnava that has been transgressed and seek forgiveness for that, make it all better again. So that is why Vaishnava Aparad is considered there's one of the reasons why it's considered in a category of its own. And it's given first treatment in the Das Nama Aparad scheme to offend the devotee. Devotee even comes before Krishna. Because what's the second offense? Krishna. Second offense is to consider Krishna's name to be equal to the names of demigods. And then it goes on, right? Third offense is...
These other offenses, except for the first one, you said they can be banished by chanting, by the process of chanting.
Yeah, standard Das Nama Aparad can be. Standard offenses against the holy name can be rectified by continued chanting. That's why, all of us at present will be committing namaparad to greater or lesser extents, but the advice is to continue to chant, because gradually those will diminish. Whereas if we're all committing Vaishnava aparad, then we've got to stop and reconsider and rectify that. So there are obviously different categories of aparad. And of course, dasnam aparad. We can go through. There's no need to list them all. 3. What is 3? Shastra. 4, guru. 5, exaggeration. 6, imagination. 7, sinning on the strength of the holy name. 8 is to consider the holy name to be equal to karma kanda sections of the Vedas. Ritualism to obtain a better life. 9, to preach to the faithless. And 10, to stubbornly hold on to habits that are antithetical to the holy name while chanting. So, but number 1 is to the devotee comes first, and then Krishna. So it shows that the devotee is all in all. And anyway, let's get on to what Srila Gurudev has to say. So he talks about ring fencing, protecting one's spiritual life by practicing what qualities? The last couple of days. Humility, tolerance, and giving honor. Trinada Pisunichena. They are the protective, that policy of humility, tolerance, giving honor without desiring it serves as a protective mechanism to one's chanting, and particularly to Vaishnava aparad. It protects one from committing that. So this subchapter is entitled The Holy Name's Purifying Power. Mahaprabhu wants everyone to chant the holy name purely, without offense. Offenses are very difficult to avoid and dangerous, but we must avoid them because they are our obstacles in chanting the Lord's holy name. Mahaprabhu shows us his mood of prayer to the holy name to help us attract the holy name's grace, which is what will truly free us from offenses. With the proper mood of prayer and regular chanting, we can be hopeful that we can receive the holy name's grace. Namaparad yuktanam namanyeva harantyagam avishranti prayuktani tanye varta karani cha. So that's from the Padma Purana, Svarga Kanda 48-49. When the holy name sees our heartfelt desire to try to chant him purely, then he will be merciful to us. We will get the qualifications we need to chant properly, and all of our difficulties will go away by his grace. This is Srila Jiva Goswami Prabhu's realization from the scriptures. Quote, we cannot avoid making offenses, but the holy name himself will give us good nourishment and relieve us from our offenses if we have love, affection, and a little connection with him. End quote. This is the main thing. If our desire is heartfelt, then we must always continuously try to chant the Lord's holy name. Continuous, attentive chanting will attract the grace of the holy name to mercifully clean our hearts, remove all our obstacles, and excuse our offenses. Through his Shikshastakam, we can see that Mahaprabhu's first expression and teaching, Chaito Darpanamarjanam, cleaning the mirror of the mind, comes by the grace of the holy name to the practitioner in the last stage. Mahaprabhu's next prayer in his Shikshastakam is Yugaitam namishena chakshusha pravrishaitam shunyaitam jagat sarvam govinda virhename. O Govinda, in separation from you, a moment seems like forever. Tears are pouring from my eyes and the whole world feels empty. Namishena and Namisha. Yugaitam namishena. There's two time periods, at opposite ends of the scale. A yuga and a nimisha. So Mahaprabhu is saying, Yugaitam namishena chakshusha pravrishaitam shunyaitam jagatsarvam govinda virhename. So a yuga, what is a yuga? An age It's a long age. The shortest yuga is Kali Yuga, and Kali Yuga is 432,000 years. That's the shortest yuga. And then Dwapara is twice the length of Kali. And then sorry? What? Treta. Satya, Treta, Dwapara, Kali. Then Treta is again another one, two. I forget the scheme. But Satya Yuga is 10 times as long as Kali Yuga. So Kali Yuga is 432,000 years, then Satya Yuga is 4.32 million years. So anyway, the point is that a yuga is a very long time. Satya, Treta, Dwapara. Dwapara is twice Kali. Treta is twice Dwapara, and Satya is twice the length of Treta, which makes Kali Yuga 10% of Treta Yuga. 10% of the duration of Satya Yuga. Anyway, back to the point. Yuga is a very long period of time, one of the longest periods of time, right? Of time measurement, we should say. And a Nimisha is just the opposite. It's one of the shortest periods of time measurement. It's like a split second. So, what is Mahaprabhu saying? He's saying, in my world right now, my current perception is that a split second is feeling like a yuga. Why? Because Krishna is not around. That's the feeling. A split second feels like an entire age, and he's crying. Gurudev says, when one chants the holy name purely, then one's consciousness is purified. Cheto darpana marjanam. And all the effects of the holy name Mahaprabhu described in his glorification of Harinam Sankirtan, Bhava Maha Davagni Nirvapanam, and so on, they appear in one's heart. Then, in pure Krishna consciousness, one feels viraha, separation from the Lord, and thinks, I am chanting the Lord's holy name, but still I am not chanting in the proper way. One then desires to chant the holy name more and more purely. Jai. Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Gurudev Ki Jai. Who's doing the chanting this morning?
Hari Haraya Nama Krishna Jadavaya Nama.
Hari Haraya Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha. Yadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha. Gopala Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan. Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohan. Jai Saparikara Shri Shri Guru Gauranga Sundar Radha Giridhari Ju ki Jai Jai Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Nirmala Charja Maharaj ki Jai Jai Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Srila Guru Dev ki Jai Jai Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Rakha Kadikha Dev Goswami Maharaj ki Jai Jai Vishnupad Bhagavan Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada ki Jai Shri Rupanand Guru Varg ki Jai Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai Samaveda Vaishnava Mandala ki Jai Samaveda Bhakti Vrinda ki Jai Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat ki Jai Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat West London ki Jai Harinam Sankirtan ki Jai Nitai Go Premanandi Hari 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 Bo